Hey, this is Michael, and here are 3 ways you can set better boundaries at work, either as a business owner, an executive, or an employee. Hey, does this sound familiar? You're sitting at work or you're working from home, and at the very last minute you get a request from one of your coworkers. And the request might be something like, hey, can you fill in for me during this Zoom call? I got something else to do. Can you show my slides? Can you just do that? And let's say that this coworker has done this before. They've dumped work on you before. They've done it to other people. And you kind of had it. You're kind of up to here. But you say yes anyway because you want to smooth things out. You want to get it done. You don't want to let down people on the Zoom call. And then when you're done with the call, you're stressed out and you're resentful and you hate your coworker. This is all too common. This happens to so many people, similar scenarios. So how do you set boundaries? I'm going to show you how. But first, let's briefly talk about dysfunctional businesses and functional businesses. There's no such thing as a totally dysfunctional or totally functional business, but most businesses fall somewhere in between. If it's more on the dysfunctional side, what that means is that things are getting done, there's maybe profits being made, but it's kind of rocky, there's maybe higher turnover, there's some burnout in the employees, and things aren't just running as tightly as possible. And this brings us to something called systems theory. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but you should look into systems theory. What this means is that a business is similar to other systems, like a family, for example. In a family, you have clear, defined roles. You have leadership. You have mom and dad, they are the leaders of the family. And then you have sons and daughters in various ages of the siblings. You have uncles, grandparents, etc. And all of these people have a role in the system, a role in keeping the family functioning. Now, a dysfunctional family, a classic example is, let's say there's an alcoholic dad, and everyone wants the family to stay together to continue to function. So what happens? People compensate or enable dad's behavior. They say, hey, let's do his work. Let's kind of cover up his alcoholism. Let's maybe call in sick for work for him. These are the ways that the family, with good intentions, tries to keep the system functioning, but they start to get resentful and angry because one of the members of that family is not fulfilling his role. Same thing in business. You may have a CEO or business leader who's not really doing their job, or some executive that's not really doing their job. And what happens? People compensate for this lack of leadership, lack of fulfilling the role, and people get resentful, people get burned out, and then you start seeing turnover, and eventually this starts affecting the bottom line of the company. So let me give you a couple of examples of what I've seen in working with my clients of how you can set better boundaries and some of the problems that cause you to maybe not set boundaries. Okay, number 1 is failure to delegate. Especially if you're a business leader or executive, or you have people reporting to you, listen carefully to this. The biggest thing I see at these levels is people not delegating enough. They're really good at what they do, they're really talented, and they just get stuff done. Just give it to me, I'll take care of it. Oh, let me just do that. And then at the end of the day, you realize it's 7 o'clock, you haven't even eaten dinner yet, and this again leads to some burnout, possibly resentment. You need to experiment with delegating more. The worst that could happen is that people will say no, but if you ask, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do this? You'd be surprised at how happy people are to help you. Number 2, the second thing that I see a lot in working with my clients that causes a lot of stress at work is the inability to say no. That's right, it's called people pleasing. You have the inability to say no. It's kind of similar to lack of delegating, but it's more about when someone asks a favor of you. Similar to our example of the Zoom call and covering for someone, these are the kinds of things where you need to get better at saying no. And here's how you do it. So I'm going to give you just a practical way to do this that really works in the real world and doesn't get you fired. So let's take that example of a colleague asking, hey, can you cover for me during the Zoom call, just do my slides? And here's what you can say. You can say something like, hey, this is kind of last minute, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Can you schedule another meeting in a couple days, a quick 15-minute meeting to go over your slides, and I'll mention that in the meeting coming up. So think about saying that. If you feel uncomfortable saying that, there might be some people-pleasing tendencies, and by the way, a lot of people have them, so don't feel bad. But just think about it. And here's another trick you can do is flip the script. Pretend you're the one asking for someone to cover for you during a meeting. And that person says back to you, you know, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Maybe you could have a meeting after this meeting. Would that be a reasonable request? Of course it would be, right? So as a reasonable person, you would say, hey, yeah, no problem. I'll do my own meeting and you don't have to cover me during this Zoom call. So that's the trick. It's called flipping the script. And you can also use the mantra of the word reasonable. Is this a reasonable thing for me to say no? By me saying no, is this reasonable? Does that sound reasonable? That's the test. And if the answer is yes, then you go ahead and say it. And number three, the third thing that I see commonly causing stress and dysfunction in the workplace, problems with boundaries, is people not asking for help. Okay, so again, similar to delegating, but it's more about when you're working on something and you actually do need help, but you don't ask for it. Either you're afraid you're going to look bad, maybe your ego's involved, maybe you don't want to trouble people, but I see this very, very commonly happening is people don't ask for help. And again, use that flip the script thing. If you had a colleague who wasn't super demanding and dumping stuff on you and just asked you, hey, do you mind taking a look at this, slide deck for 15 minutes or giving me some feedback on that? Maybe you'd say yes and help them out, right, if you weren't busy. So it's asking for help and thinking about how what your real goal is at the end of the day is not for you to completely outshine everybody or you to look good. People aren't really paying that much attention to you anyway. They're really more worried about their own stuff. So think about asking for help and try to embrace the philosophy of synergy. We're working together to create something great, either a product or service that helps people. That's what we're here for. And by me asking for help or feedback on a half-baked idea or whatever, doesn't matter. We're moving the ball down the football field however we can get it into the end zone. That's our goal. I don't care if I look stupid. I don't care if he or she looks stupid. We need to work together and grow things together. So if that resonates with you, it can take a little bit of pressure off of, maybe being wrong in someone's eyes, or, you can be a little bit less perfectionistic. So again, the three common things are failure to delegate, saying no, or the inability to say no, and asking for help. If you can start doing some of the things I've suggested here, it's going to make you feel much less stressed. You're going to have better boundaries. People are going to actually respect you more. You can respect yourself more. And you will feel a lot less resentment. You'll be working in a way that's within your role. Remember, that is the key, that if everyone sticks to their role, now you can float occasionally, but you don't want to do it too much. You want to stick to your role. And in doing so, everyone has clear expectations of what they're supposed to do in the organization, and you work in a functional company and less of a dysfunctional company. So my final message is for all of you business leaders out there, business owners, it's really up to you. You set the tone, right? Now, when I say up to you, it doesn't mean that you don't delegate. It just means that you really do set the tone of leadership and working together. So think about that. Maybe you need to fire somebody. Maybe you need to hire more people. There is a way that you can be working better as a business leader. It is possible, and it takes a little bit of risk-taking, maybe asking for help, and getting some feedback from people and stepping up. So I hope this helps all of you in business. Everyone, most everyone works. So if you're a business leader, if you're an executive, a lot of people report to you, or you're an employee, there are ways to set better boundaries, stay within your role, and everyone wins in the end.